This is draft season. John Schmelk, Tony Pauline, Eric Crocker with you, back with you. Don't forget, draft season is presented by Tommy Hilfiger, a PVH brand and an official partner of the New York Football Giants. Hope everyone out there had a great Thanksgiving as we get into the end of college football's regular season. We had a lot of rivalry games this week, more coming. Then we get bowl season. We have invitations being accepted to the Shrine Game, to the Senior Bowl. We'll hit all that over the next few weeks as we inch towards the end of college football season and really into the thick of the draft process here. But let's try to keep everybody up to date of what's going on in college football so we hit the ground running when we get to that point at the end of the NFL regular season in January. Boys, a couple of big games this weekend, and we talked about rivalry weekend, and it begins with Michigan, Ohio State. Yeah. And it's funny, I was watching the game, and I was trying to keep an eye on some of the prospects as I watched. And I think the funny thing, guys, even though Michigan came out with a win, second year in a row, Ohio State fans everywhere not happy, Ohio State really has more of the NFL, I think, caliber prospects you're looking for that'll get drafted higher. Just your guys' general thoughts on watching that game and kind of these programs and their pipeline to the NFL. Croc, why don't we start with you?
Well, I want to start with the quarterback, C.J. Stroud, because I think that's probably the most polarizing prospect on Ohio State. They definitely have other really good prospects, a guy that's not coming out for a while, and Marvin Harrison Jr. Love watching him play and what that looks like. Paris Johnson, I know we'll get to him as well, and there were some good things on film. But C.J. Stroud, and there's been a lot of talk about who's going to be the first quarterback taken. Will it be Bryce Young? Is he kind of penciled in there, or is it in ink where it's just like, Bryce Young, he's going to be the first guy no matter what. You also hear other names, Will Levis, and whoever else people are talking about. But watching CJ Stroud, I will say this. On paper, if you look at the numbers, not a great day. As a prospect, though, and some of the things that he was able to do, I came away very impressed, especially after the rewatch. I know he can throw the ball downfield with really good precision, not worried about that at all. It's more the intermediate stuff, and if he gets moved off of his spot, what does that look like with his accuracy and whatnot? And I saw some plays where I'm seeing him not shy away from difficult throws, the layer throws over the middle, trying to lay it over a linebacker, throwing that 2-ball, right? Because you got the 1-ball fastball, you got the 3-ball, which is kind of that fade where you put a lot of arc on it, and then you have the 2-ball hard with an arc, and he lariated it right over a defender, and what happens? Goes off of his tight end's hands, ends up being an interception. So everybody sees the interception happen, but not the difficult throw that he attempted, and I thought it was pretty precise with the accuracy there. There were some throws falling away, throwing on the money, corner routes, out routes, feeling the pressure, so subtle movements in the pocket. I just thought there were a lot of really good things that I think translates to the next level.
Well, first of all, I mean, to answer the question, I'm looking at my board right now. Of the top 10 players from both of those schools, 6 are from Ohio State, 4 are from Michigan. 2 of those Michigan guys are the tight ends, Luke Schumacher and Eric All who's been injured this year, and Schumacher who's been injured. So, yeah, I think when you're looking at it from a pro prospect point of view, the scale tilts heavily towards Ohio State, especially when you consider that I have Mazi Smith and DJ Turner rated much higher than most other people. As far as CJ Stroud's concerned, I'm going to disagree with Eric here. I agree with what Eric said about the physical skills. That's never been an issue with me as far as CJ Stroud's concerned. But he really hasn't developed into a passer, really hasn't developed into a complete quarterback. I think a lot of that falls on the shoulders of the Ohio State coaching staff, who have not done a good job with them. And they really haven't done a good job this year. If like you said, John, Ohio State's got better pro prospects, better players, but Michigan keeps beating them. Michigan doesn't beat them. Michigan thumps them. And I think that this was kind of, we talked about this before. If you go back on the last podcast, I said because of the way they start and the way CJ Stroud starts, and he can't get the team in the end zone, Michigan was going to win the game. And that's what happened. They had 4 drives. They came away with 2 touchdowns and 2 field goals when they really should have had at least 3 touchdowns, if not 4 touchdowns. I'm going to give you 4 quarterbacks: Will Levis, Bryce Young, Hendon Hooker, Will Levis. Let's start again. Bryce Young, Hendon Hooker, the kid from Texas, Ewers, who transferred from Ohio State, and CJ Stroud. If you need a game-tying drive with a minute and a half left in a game, Which of those three quarterbacks are you going to take, and which quarterback are you going to say, nah, I'm not too sure about him? Because when I look at those four quarterbacks, even though Ewers is a freshman and ripping it up in Texas, CJ Stroud just consistently doesn't come through in the big spot. Yeah, he makes some great throws. He's done that for the past 2 years. But the same mistakes I saw Saturday against Michigan were the same mistakes I saw when I personally went out to see him the first game he ever started for Ohio State against Oregon. Doesn't see the field, doesn't use all his targets. And again, a lot of it is CJ Stroud not developing. And in my opinion, a lot of it is just poor coaching. I mean, same thing Saturday. I saw this Saturday against Michigan. I saw against Oregon. He comes to the line of scrimmage behind the center, and he's looking at the sidelines. And the play clock is going down. 6, 5, 4. And they don't let him run the offense. They don't let him play. Now, maybe they think he's incapable of that. Or maybe they're just too iron-fisted. I think part of CJ Stroud's problems is they are not developing him properly. And I think right now, as far as I'm concerned, and I wrote about this, when it was neck and neck between Bryce Young and CJ Stroud at the beginning of the season. I see it as a chasm right now because I see CJ Stroud as a guy who probably should go back to school. And if he doesn't go back to school and he's drafted, you may have to sit him for a year because if you put him in there, you may ruin him.
Let me say this, and Croc, I'd like to get your response to Tony there. I'll just add this, and this is meant to sound as a slight to Stroud, but it's not meant to be. To me, he's almost like a paint by numbers quarterback, right? He's extremely accurate. He's very accurate. He throws balls into tight windows, crossers deep, really good thrower of the football. But I feel like everything is so in a lot of ways schemed up for him and the way Ohio State runs their offense that I haven't seen him have to do some of the things that I've seen Bryce Young do, where he just seems to do a lot of athletic things, does a lot of stuff off platform. I don't think Stroud's the best athlete. He's fine, but he's not, a super guy that's going to scramble and do stuff like that and run. And again, I think he is your old school traditional pocket passer, but I'm not sure that he can do some of the other stuff to supplement the accuracy right away to be a high-level NFL quarterback. Now, I think he's got the tools. I think that stuff can come. But based on what I've seen at Ohio State so far, I don't think he's there to the same level that I've seen Bryce Young be there in terms of where he is at Alabama. That's where I am, at least.
Yeah, I think in the SEC, you get challenged a lot more from the defenses there because they play a lot more man coverage.
Yeah.
So it's not as scheme dependent in the sense of from the quarterback, right? Like you have to see it and you have to throw it. You have to throw with anticipation as opposed to just being super spread out against a soft defense as you see more so in the Big Ten and even like the Big 12, right? Defense is just a little bit softer than what you're seeing Bryce Young have to go against. And you talked about kind of the offense and how it is structured. And we got to put some of that on Day because some of the same questions that y'all are asking right now, I mean, those are the same things that were going on about Justin Fields. And looking to the sideline, never huddling up, not setting any protection type things, and him waiting and really not throwing anticipation because of the two-way goes or what they call it, the receivers have, downfield, they make a move off of, okay, the safety's here, I'm gonna go here.
Option routes.
Yeah, they got the option routes, but they're like downfield option routes. Mm-hmm. So you got Justin Fields just sitting, and now he's holding on to the ball too long. Now everybody's saying, oh, man, he holds on to the ball too long, but he's just playing within the scheme of the offense. So I think there is a lot of that going on with Stroud as well, where it's supposed to be spread out and these easy throws, and it kind of handicaps them a little bit from an evaluation process standpoint. So when I watch him, I just look at, okay, what is he able to do? What things do I like that I'm taking away? Because I know he is not going to be running any resemblance of this offense at the next level.
See, and to me, that is a problem in a sense. That's what the NFL scouts do. They look at a player and they say, well, what can he do? And sometimes they overlook the fact that this guy has problems seeing the field, reading defenses, doesn't really spread the ball around, which in my opinion, is a major issue. And again, I go back to the coaching, go back to the development. If I'm CJ Stroud and Bryce Young enters the draft, I'm looking at maybe transferring to Alabama to get coached by Bill O'Brien. Or if I'm Ohio State and I don't know what the rules are, in college football, I'm going to Bill O'Brien and offer him and say, here's a blank check. You write your number. We need you to come in and develop CJ Stroud. The bottom line for me in that game was, CJ Stroud got outplayed and beaten by what is a sandlot quarterback in JJ McCarthy. And that's okay on Saturday, but that's not a good thing on Sunday. You can't get outplayed the way he did, the way JJ McCarthy did. And again, I agree. I think Stroud is not developed as we thought, and he's making the same mistakes, like I said, as he did, his first game against Oregon. And a lot of it absolutely falls on that coaching staff.
Okay, we can have let's just get the quarterbacks out of the way, and we'll get back to Ohio State, Michigan. Can you make the argument here, guys, that at some point during this draft process, or maybe even on draft night, are we going to have some NFL teams, or maybe a lot of NFL teams, the majority of NFL teams, you tell me, that could have Will Levis ranked ahead CJ Stroud on their board, or have Anthony Richardson ranked ahead of CJ Stroud on their boards? Your thoughts? Tony, you're shaking your head.
Yeah, I mean, to me, Anthony Richardson is CJ Stroud times 10. I mean, he's CJ Stroud, I think.
No, but Tony, real quick, I think Richardson's a much better athlete than Stroud is, so we can rely on other things,
Right, but as far I'm looking at, and I would agree with that. As far he's better in the sense that he's better running the ball, he's more of a threat with his legs. But I think Stroud is a better passer, and Stroud is really deficient as a passer. And I think, from my point of view, CJ Stroud is not NFL ready, and Richardson is that times 10 because, Richardson is much more inconsistent. He'll make some incredible throws at times. Even some of his incompletes are incredible throws, but he just can't get into a groove. And I've reported a couple of times, word is Anthony Richardson is likely to enter the draft. I think it's a big mistake. Will he be rated ahead of CJ Stroud? I bet I say no way at all. And I don't think Will Levis is going to be rated ahead of CJ Stroud either, because Will Levis has had a really tough stretch here where he hasn't played well. And as you said, John, Will Levis looks more like a big athlete that they put at quarterback than a natural quarterback. Right. So I would be shocked if either of those guys are rated ahead of CJ Stroud. Truth be told, I had Hendon Hooker rated ahead of Will Levis right before Hooker went down with that knee injury. Now he's got a decision to make.
Croc, what do you think?
I 100% agree on Richardson. He's more of an athlete playing quarterback than a quarterback that's an athlete.
Croc, I'm sorry for interrupting. Richardson's almost like a Malik Willis on steroids from last year, right? Like a much bigger guy, really good arm, can run around a lot, but just doesn't know how to play the position yet.
Right. And I think even Willis was more of a pure thrower of the football.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Then, so yeah, definitely on the athletic standpoint. So now Malik Willis went third round. So are we talking about Richardson being more of a day two type guy? I'd say just as a thrower, I would say that because it is far too inconsistent for my liking. I mean, and when you are the quarterback of Florida, which you have talent there, you have quarterbacks that have come through there and done well, even guys like, Kyle Trask, who wasn't the greatest of prospects, but, Florida was good. Well, Florida just lost to Vanderbilt. And I put a lot of that on the quarterback. We talk about his athletic ability and being able to throw. If you're doing those things, you can't lose to Vandy. No. So I'm a little down on Richardson and hope that he returns. And maybe just one more year will help him really refine a lot of things that they want him to do as a passer.
Yeah, look, if Richardson goes back to school and does refine those things, he could be a top 10 pick with all his tools. So 100% I'm with you. I think he should go back to school as well. All right, back to Michigan, Ohio State. Croc, why don't you take it? Who was the first guy you're looking at other than Stroud when you're evaluating this game that maybe jumped out to you a little bit?
Paris Johnson, man, because I want to know where he's at with all the tackles coming out in this class. And it's like, well, who is the guy? And that's the name that comes up the most. And watching him, I could see why. He was really good. I thought he reached the next level extremely well, getting from one block to the next. I thought his anchor was really good when facing a bull rush. He did get beat one time by, let me get the name, Mike Morris on an inside swim move. So I'm like, okay, and it's cool to see how he handles different things. But just from the footwork, I thought he was good. He didn't look to be too off balance. I thought he did a good job of staying on blocks. And combo blocks, doing really good, move to the next level. And he does this unique thing where he kind of jumps out and attacks guys as opposed to just getting your normal kick step.
He short stepped. Yeah.
So he like works
stop him.
towards the guy and then gets his hands on it. I thought he did a really good job of that consistently. Not saying there weren't any reps where it's like, oh man, maybe lost that one, but I'd say 9 out of 10 reps he was pretty on.
Yeah, if I had one guy, well, there were a couple of guys. I happen to like Luke Whippler, the center for Ohio State. In fact, he's my number one rated next level prospect at the center position. I mean, he's smart, he's tough. You look at Ohio State; they've put a lot of real good centers into the NFL. I think Whippler's the next guy. He grades out as a second day pick for me. Fundamentally very sound, blocks with great leverage, stays square, is able to power guys off the ball, or he's able to seal them with outstanding body positioning. Really a real good center. And I think you got to look at Cornelius Johnson as well. I mean, he was a guy who was highly rated by scouts coming into the season. They thought he was a potential day 2 pick. Really didn't have the year that people expected as far as production is concerned. Really kept Michigan in that game in the first half when it looked like Ohio State was going to blow them out with 2 really big long receptions. And now, what we saw Saturday from Cornelius Johnson is what scouts had expected all year long.
And Cornelius Johnson kind of allowed Michigan to win that game, right? Ohio State comes out to start that game. They said, we're not letting you guys run the football. We're going to stack the box. You're not going to run it. And Michigan had to loosen him up, Croc, and they went to Cornelius Johnson deep a couple of times, and he's kind of what loosened up the defense. And then Michigan was able to run the ball a little bit more in the second half.
Yeah, he did. He won over the top. And I was sitting at the blackjack table watching the game out in Phoenix, Arizona. And I'm like, wait, I start talking to the dealer. I'm like, this is not supposed to be Michigan's offense.
No.
Airing it out, throwing the ball downfield, offensive explosion in the first half. And he said, yeah, I would have taken the under in this game. So we got into that conversation, but it was good to see them push the ball down the field and do those type of things and see Johnson have that type of success. Everybody knows heading into this game, the receiver to watch for over at Michigan is blanking on his name, but number 8.
Ronnie Bell.
Yeah, Bill, right? So Bill's he's been the guy. He's the one that everybody's looking at. But I thought the other receiver played off him extremely well, making plays, breaking tackles, beating guys out of the slot. I thought he did a really good job having a 2-way go and his stem on it before going post, turning the safety around. A lot of good things there. And you see that ability to be able to win with speed vertically down the field.
Tony, you mentioned Whippler. What do you think of Michigan center Oluwatimi? He was kind of, the announcers just kept throwing out there during the game, best center in college football. And I'm just curious if you guys agree with that take. And then I know DeJuan Jones, the other offensive tackle for Ohio State, a lot of the guys like too.
Yeah, he's a transfer from Virginia. I've written about him a couple times this year. We talked about earlier Anthony Richardson, being a great athlete but not being a great quarterback. Oluwatimi is a great center who's not a great athlete. And what's going to happen with him throughout the draft process is he's not going to run a fast 40. He's not going to jump high in the vertical jump. But you watch the film, watch it going back to the Virginia days, and he is just an outstanding center. He's got decent size. He was not even graded by scouts coming into the year. Scouts ignored him. And now you're looking at a guy that's probably a late round pick. He's one of those guys, teams like the New England Patriots have a way of grabbing these offensive linemen, these interior offensive linemen in the 6th and 7th round, and then they go on to start, in the NFL for 8.
Who's the guy they drafted from Michigan, Tony?
Right, the big fat guy. And I actually liked him. He's 350. He was like a 350-pound guy.
Oh, I don't remember his name. I got to look it up now.
And he is that sort of guy, and they do it well at center. So that's what's going to happen with the Michigan center. He's probably going to be a 6th, 7th round pick. He's going to not have real good testing numbers at the combine or his pro day, but some team is going to find a way to fit him in. He gets the most from his ability. He's smart. He's fundamentally sound. And forget about just Saturday against Ohio State. He's played like that all year long. He is that good. Great football player, not a real good athlete.
I'm looking up. I got to get the name. It's killing me. Let's see. Oh, Michael Onwenu. There we go.
There you go.
I knew it. Yeah. He was the guy I talked to people in Michigan that loved him too coming out, and he got drafted late, but he ended up being a really good player.
He was like 340 pounds, but he could move. He was like a dancing bear. That term dancing bear. That's what he was like. And it was just the fact that he was too big why he got knocked out, but you knew he could play. Oluwatimi is a little bit different in the sense that He's not the biggest guy. He's not the greatest athlete, but boy, can he play football.
You got anything of DeJuan Jones, Tony, or no?
Juwan Jones to me, is a lesser version of the kid that came out of Minnesota last year, who's playing with the Ravens right now.
Oh, the big kid. That's like 6'8", 370.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I think he's kind of a step below that. I think he's a middle round pick. I mean, he's a big, massive guy. He's strictly a right tackle. He doesn't have the athleticism the kid from Minnesota had last year. I think if you're running a power gap type of offense, he's a guy that you look at in the 4th, maybe the 3rd round, and you stick him at right tackle.
Yeah, my notes on him is big body, doesn't move as well as Johnson. All right, so that was what initially jumped out. That's my first note that I wrote down about him while watching him against Michigan.
Absolutely, and you go year to year, and then you forget the names of some of these guys that come out in the draft. He must be Daniel Falele. There we go.
Yeah, Falele. Yeah.
I loved watching him in Mobile, man. He was fun.
Absolutely. And he was very athletic. But, people think that these big, huge guys that are athletic are going to go early. You look at the league, you want a big offensive line, but they want guys that are super mobile, super quick. And DeJuan Jones really doesn't fit that mold.
All right, let's go to some of the skill guys here, because I'm curious to get your take, and then we'll hit a couple of defensive guys. We haven't seen Jackson Smith-Njigba all year. Where is he, Tony, Eric? Like, is he still going to come out? I mean, he's put nothing on tape this year, really, hardly at all. People thought he'd be the number 1 prospect. It hasn't turned out to be a wide receiver class, so maybe he would still be a top 2-3 guy off the board, maybe the top guy. I don't know. You guys tell me. Where is he? Do you think he's still going to come out? And Croc, we'll start with you. Like, how do you even evaluate where he is given his lack of playing time?
I thought this was a very, very big year for him. A lot of people were mocking him in the top 10 heading into this year, right? So between him and the kid out of LSU, it was like Butte. No matter what they do this year, they're going top 10. And I'm going to call out one of my guys, Quincy Avery, all right? And we're going to hold Quincy Avery to this quarterback trainer. But he said, oh, man, he didn't have to step on the field. He's going to be a top 10 pick regardless. I'm not certain about that because I still have questions about the overall athleticism. I know how good of a college receiver he can be. You watch where he worked out of more of the slot. So you have these favorable matchups. You're playing out in space against linebackers and safeties. And I thought he did some really good things with run after catch. I had some questions about just the legit field speed, like the ability to truly run away from guys. You watch Olave, you watch Garrett Wilson. And I know what they said. It sounds like the little brother thing, right? When the big brother says, "Oh yeah, but watch my little brother. He's better than all of us," right? And I think there might have been a little they're just talking to that because I don't see the same level of pure separation, vertical speed as I did with some of those guys. And I think there are questions right now. Is we were talking about him being a potential top 10 pick. He's not the best receiver prospect on his team right now. Even if he played this year, I still think Marvin Harrison Jr., who can't come out this year, and Abuka. Help me with it. Abuka, yeah. There might be people that like those guys even more. So I wish I could have seen him this year just to see, like, man, has he taken that next step from an athleticism standpoint? And did he just need Olave and Garrett Wilson? Those were going to be questions. Obviously, in the bowl game last year, did not need them, and he went absolutely bonkers. But I want to see him do that again.
And obviously, just so the fans understand, Marvin Harrison Jr. not draft eligible this year. And I can't tell with these college websites, is Abuka draft eligible this year, Tony? Or does he not have, or does he need one more year before he can go into the draft?
I think he's only 2 years removed from school, so he's not draft eligible. Getting back to Smith, I like him a lot. I mean, I had him rated higher than CJ Stroud coming into the season. I think he does a lot of things very well. Does he come out? You missed almost the entire season due to, I believe, was a hamstring issue.
Hamstring, right? Yeah.
Right. You got to be nuts if you come out because, if it was a knee issue, if it was a joint issue, that's one thing. But persistent hamstring issues, that is a major red flag. I think CJ Stroud is best served to go back for a year. I think Smith-Njigba has to go back for another year. And basically, Ohio State will probably be playing with the same offense, except for a couple of offensive linemen, because I expect Paris Johnson, even Whippler, to enter the draft. So you could basically have the same skill players there with the quarterback for Ohio State. I think it would be insanity for Smith-Njigba to enter the draft. You got to remember, one thing that now plays into this whole decision making is the NIL process, because a lot of these players, granted, we saw the Penn State offensive tackle say he's going back for another year, and he basically, talking to people, pushed aside $30 million of guaranteed money for whatever he's going to get in the NIL. But some of these guys, if they're on the fence as to whether or not they're going to come back, and they're able to get an attractive NIL offer from the school or from somebody else, that makes it more enticing for them to go back to school. I think that's what Ohio State's probably going to try and do with Smith and Juba, as well as CJ Stroud.
All right, what do you guys think of the two Michigan running backs? Donovan Edwards obviously had a couple really huge runs in the second half. He screams like 15 touches a game in the NFL to me, catches the ball, speed guy. Corum obviously is more the workhorse for Michigan. Your guys' thoughts on those two guys? Tony, why don't we start with you?
Look, Corum's also going to be a 15-touch guy in the NFL. I mean, he's only 5'7", he's under 200 pounds. He's that big of a guy. So I don't know how he's going to carry the ball 25 times in the NFL. I mean, they play well. It works well there because the quarterback can do so many different things. Even during that game, you saw the jump pass at one point. So it works very well. I think both of those guys are more day three type of situational third down type backs for the NFL.
The thing I like about Corum is really just his ability. They're giving him 30 plus touches in a game and not worried about it at all. Now, eventually we did see him get tackled awkwardly, hurt his knee. I think that limited, any touches in his previous game. But what I've been seeing from him throughout the year, he has really good initial explosiveness. He doesn't have quite that pure long speed. But if he is a guy that you think, hey, we just want to give him, a few touches here and there, maybe he does get just, 13 to 15 touches in a game, I think he can be a consistent 4.5 yard per carry type guy. Again, won't spring off those huge runs and be able to outrun these NFL defenses, but I think he plays strong. He has really good contact balance. I think those are things that will translate in the short game in the NFL.
And what do you guys think of Edwards? And I tried to figure this out too. Again, it's hard to tell with these college websites. Is Edwards draft eligible? And your guys' thoughts on Croc, your thoughts on Edwards?
Well, I'm not sure if he's draft eligible, and it is weird because I think a lot of things are thrown off because of COVID.
Yeah, I think so
COVID,
too. Yeah,
they didn't. When the COVID happened, they didn't count that year for people. So there are some people where it says they're a sophomore,
but they're really a junior.
They could be a junior or senior, and they're redshirted and they're this and that. So it has thrown a lot of things off. But he's definitely more of the explosive back. It reminds me a little bit more of like Ronald Jones when he was coming out of USC. Kind of that, that long strider, has that nice long speed, able to outrun the Pac-12. We see him able to outrun the Big Ten. I think they complement each other extremely well. And I think that's the type of dynamic that NFL teams are going to want. That guy that can really hit it one cut and he's gone, then the other guy that can kind of pound away and grind away and get more of that short yardage pickup.
Yeah, he's actually a little bit bigger than Corum. But what you got to do is he is actually a true sophomore. So like what I do is I will go to the player's bio at the website for the school. So when you go to see Donovan Edwards, you see that he was actually a true freshman in 2021, never redshirted in 2020. And it's funny because some schools will basically factor in that extra year and make a junior or sophomore, while other schools don't. You just got to do a little bit of investigative work. But yeah, he is absolutely explosive. I mean, he's a guy who can break off the long runs from the line of scrimmage. A little bit bigger than Corum. But, like Marvin Harrison Jr., not draft eligible, so we're going to have to wait a little while on him.
Yeah, and he'll get more opportunities if, Corum does come out and he gets more of the load there as well. All right, you guys I'll leave the field open, either this game specific or just generally defensive prospects, Ohio State and Michigan. You guys can just throw names at me. What do you think? Croc, Tony, either one of you guys can step up to the plate.
I thought Zach Harrison played relatively well. It was the second week in a row that Zach Harrison, the defensive end from Ohio State, who was kind of quiet for most of the year, really stepped it up. If you watch the game the week before, he basically won that game for Ohio State with 2 sacks against a real good offensive tackle from Maryland by the name of Jalen Duncan, one which was caused the interception, which put Ohio State ahead. I thought he had a lot of moments. He's an athletic guy. He's a tall guy. He's got to get a little bit stronger because he's got that long, thin frame, but he's explosive. He's tough. I think he's really put the pedal to the metal the past couple of weeks, Zach Harrison. I thought he had a lot of good moments against what is, I should say, a good offensive line from Michigan.
Go ahead, Croc.
Yeah, Mike Morris, he's a guy that I talked about earlier, and I really liked when he beat Paris Johnson inside on the move. I think outside of that, he tried to win a little bit more with speed around the edge as opposed to having a move, and then he would just kind of go to more of a bull rush. So I'm looking for more of a pass rush plan from him, see if we can kind of get that down the line. But overall, you see big body guy, and you see all the ability, but just still trying to figure it out. Kind of reminds me a little bit as far as the figuring out part, not body and all that. But Boye Mafe last year coming out of Minnesota, one of the knocks on him was he doesn't have a pass rush plan, And when I watched Morris, that was one of the things I realized as well. You didn't see a whole lot of moves. It was, can I beat him around the edge with speed? And then if I can't, then okay, I got to come back in the bull rush. And that was it. There was no counter to it.
Yeah, and the thing about Morris, like Mafe, he comes out of a 3-point stance and stands over tackle. So he's a real good athlete.
I know you love watching the corners, Croc. Any thoughts on DJ Turner, the Michigan cornerback? I know a lot of people are high on him.
I watched him. There wasn't that much to take away from it because they played kind of soft in that game. There was just a lot of off coverage. I didn't see him really, truly be able to challenge himself. But, there were some nice moves. I did note that he had a play against on the switch release. And so he was in man coverage. And Ohio State, they did a switch release on the guys. He was able to fight through that, flatten off the route, and then the receiver, Marvin Harrison Jr., he kind of dropped it, but I give the defensive back some credit there because he was there to distract him. I think that's an overlooked part of playing cornerback position. Some of it is just distracting the receiver and throwing off his concentration enough just to get a drop, and I thought he did that on that play.
Croc with the defensive back propaganda. We like that. Tony, what's your Maisie Smith watch at?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't see him on the field. I know I think he finished with like 4 tackles, but I was looking for him, and it seemed like they rotated those guys in and out a lot. But again, he was going up against Luke Whippler, the center from Ohio State, who I talked about earlier, who I thought had a real good game.
What's his stock watch? Are we looking first round for Maisie Smith still, or is that one of those guys that's kind of different depending on the evaluator you talk to?
That's what it is. I mean, I've heard scouts told me, yeah, he's a 4th, 5th rounder. Some people have told me he's a 2nd rounder. I mean, my affection for Maisie Smith has been we talked about that the first show of the year when we had Bruce Feldman on about how much I like him. So it'll be interesting to see where it eventually pans out for Smith.
And by the way, the player that Tony mentioned previously, the Penn State offensive tackle, was Oli Fashanu. We talked about him. It was either last show or the show prior. I don't quite remember. 19 years old. He's had a heck of a year. A lot of people thought he might be the first offensive lineman off the board. It could be a top 10 pick. So him going back is really a big deal. All right, Notre Dame, USC, guys. Let's touch on that very quickly. And Croc, we'll start with you, because we're still trying to kind of feel out this wide receiver class, I feel like. And Jordan Addison was one of the guys coming into the year that had a lot of production. And I think that's continued at USC. How do you see him? Is he in line here for being the first wide receiver off the board? Your thoughts on him as a player?
We'll see if he's the first wide receiver. We know he won the Biletnikoff Award a year ago, but he's a guy that USC definitely does different things to free him up and get the ball in his hands, whether it's screens, they'll do, pick routes, different things to get the ball in his hands in space. I think he does a good job of that. The run after catch is there. I think, how much pure speed does he have? Would that be a question? I haven't been able to see him just run straight fly routes and run by a defensive back. Not saying you need to. I think he does all the other things well. He drops his hips very well, works back to the ball, good natural hands. He did have a fumble, got overturned and fumbled. I don't know, but Foskey, and I know we'll get to him, but a great pursuit play by Foskey to chase him down from the back. I mean, he was like 40 yards down the field. So I think he does a lot of really good things. It's going to be interesting to see who factors in what when it pertains to this wide receiver class, because guys are so much different, and there's not that just surefire wide receiver one in this class, in my opinion.
Want to see how big Jordan Addison is, because he looks like a smaller guy.
He looks like a slot to me. Yeah, absolutely.
And that's going to kind of reduce. I mean, I love him as a receiver, but how big is he and where are you going to use him at the next level? With all the receiver screens and everything else, now you know why he transferred to USC. I mean, and it's great to see that USC's got its mojo back, because you watch that game and they're very chatty on the field. You know, they're very confident in themselves, and it's good for college football when USC is doing well and is vying for national championships. But I like Addison a lot. Again, you know, had some nicks and bruises this year, which put him on the sideline, which again goes back to body type and how big he is. I think he's going to be a first-round choice if he enters the draft. I expect him to enter the draft. Where he goes in the first round, I think, will be dictated what happens throughout the pre-draft process, combines, pro day workouts, things like that.
Obviously, and not to connect these guys just because they both went to USC, but there were a couple guys that he really reminded me of. One, Robert Woods, obviously former USC receiver. Right? Not that he's not going to blow you away with that athleticism, but he was really good there. And Marquise Lee. And Marquise Lee, before the knee injury, right? Before the knee injury happened, I mean, he was like the best receiver in college football. He had a knee injury, kind of slowed him down a little bit. He didn't have the pro career you thought he would have, but a really good, productive receiver. Not sure he wins vertically down the field as much as what we saw from Marquise Lee, but you see a lot of talent there. Very fluid mover as well.
Yeah, it's funny, Croc. You go back, you mentioned Marquise Lee. I remember in that draft, I went back and watched, I think it was his sophomore tape, right? That was pre-knee injury for Lee. And I was going back and forth in my rankings with him and Beckham. And I'm like, both these guys can move. Like, it was their athleticism was crazy. And then Lee just was never the same after he had that injury, which was too bad.
Yeah.
All right. Caleb Williams, I know he's a couple years off. Is real deal? Or you guys will buy in?
I mean, he looks like it. He's got a great quarterback coach. He's got a quarterback coach there that has, you know, developed a lot of guys and put
USC quarterback, by the way, for the people that don't know.
You know, in Lincoln Riley. So everything seems to be heading in the right direction for him. He's definitely he's showing progress. He's a much better quarterback now than what he was a year ago at Oklahoma when he had the same coach. So that's what you like to see. I mean, obviously, probably going to be the front runner for the Heisman. You know, once the 2023 mock drafts are over and people are mocking for the 2024, he's going to be the name that's that I think is unanimously the first pick of the draft. I think the signs are good. Let's wait and see what happens moving forward.
Yeah, I think it has definitely helped him being able to stay in that offense for another year. I think last year they relied a little bit more on his athleticism, more so than a quarterback. Now I think now we see him taking that next step as a thrower of the football. It's really fun watching him. And I saw it on social media. I'll fall into the trap a little bit as well, just because of what it looks like. But man, Patrick Mahomes at Texas Tech, right? Where there's a lot of this off script type stuff, off platform type throws. Not sure he has quite the arm of Patrick Mahomes, but he definitely has a really good arm. But you see him try some of the tight window stuff. I would say decision making, that's something that he definitely can improve on, as was and still is the case for Patrick Mahomes. As great as Patrick Mahomes is, he still throw a lot of interceptable balls. I see some of that with Williams, and just sometimes just the running around, which again you see from Patrick Mahomes as well. Again, Patrick Mahomes, MVP, Super Bowl MVP. It worked for him. We'll see if down the line it could work for Caleb Williams as well. But there's a little flair to his game that I think is kind of fun to watch.
Any other USC guys that really jumped out to you guys? Obviously, USC with that big win over Notre Dame on Saturday night.
Well, I mean, Tui Pelotu.
Good job, Tony. Well done.
There you go. Thank you. Who I think he was kind of quiet in that game, but he's had a monster year, and I'm told he's going to enter the draft. You know, where are you going to play him at the next level? It's going to be an interesting evaluation. I haven't done a lot of film work on him, but I was on the phone with somebody on the West Coast yesterday, and they think he's a surefire first rounder. So that's going to be interesting to see. Mekhi Becton, the transfer cornerback from Colorado's played well, as has Shane Lee, the linebacker who transferred from Alabama. Shane Lee looked like the next big-time linebacker to come from the Alabama program in 2020, was non-existent, basically disappeared in 2021, took his game to USC. He's not back to the level where I saw him in 2020, but he's playing productive football. That's a good sign. So USC's got it going on.
Do you have any thoughts on those guys, or you could jump to Notre Dame, whatever you want to do?
Well, I was going to say Tui Pelotu. I butchered it, right? I'm pretty sure.
No, not bad.
But,
okay.
He's been really good. We're talking about a guy with double-digit sacks right now. He's very disruptive, but I agree with where is he going to play at the next level, right? This is a guy who it almost feels like a tweener. Like, is he like a 3-4 end? Or maybe he can fit in this new NFL style of a defensive end who everybody's not going to be, Von Miller off of the edge. You might need a guy that it can be a little bit more stout. And teams are going more towards that too high defense. So you need kind of bigger bodies there. He's kind of this tweener. He's not a 290-pound guy, but he's also not that 250, 260-pound guy that flies off of the edge. So we'll see how that translates. But yeah, I am hearing as well that people really like him for a first round.
Yeah. And when the person told me yesterday they think first round for him, and I was surprised, they said, listen, he can rush the passer. He's a big bodied guy for a pass rusher. And you look at this year's class, and there are not a lot of big bodied pass rushers, which is what their justification was for him going in the first round. One other guy from USC got to mention, Andrew Voorhees, who's played terrific at guard all season, played tackle last year. They kicked him inside. He's actually a big body blocker who looks better in a confined area, played left guard. I think he's had a terrific year, looked really good against Notre Dame, as he has all season long.
Hey, Giant fans, don't miss the second legacy game at MetLife Stadium on Sunday, December 4th. If you're a Giants fan and you're listening to this, of course, this is a draft podcast for all fans, but the Giants will be in their throwback legacy uniforms from the 80s and 90s when they take on the Washington Commanders, a playoff spot potentially at stake. The stadium will be branded in throwback designs, exclusive collectible pennant for the first 30,000 fans in attendance. Limited tickets are available. Go to giants.com/tickets to claim yours today. Michael Mayer here, guys. Still first tight end off the board, you think, and first rounder, Tone?
I mean, he looked tremendous. I mean, you go back. I mean, and this Giant fans who are watching this will laugh. He reminds me of a more athletic version of Mark Bavaro.
Ooh, those are big words.
I mean, a guy who you watch them Saturday getting up in a crowd of 3 or 4 USC defenders, coming away with the reception, taking a pounding, holding on the ball. I mean, he looks like a big body tight end, a very athletic big body tight end. And I was one who was kind of hesitant. He looked like he really didn't want to block, and he wasn't interested if the play wasn't in his vicinity. He's done well this year, and I really thought he stood out against USC. Looked really, really good. Yeah,
I've been very impressed with just his ball skills, right? This is a guy who I'll continue to watch. I'm like, man, how's this big guy getting open? How's he getting open? He always gets open. He does a really good job of the way he uses his body to shield himself. He'll shield the ball away from defenders. Really nice, soft hands catcher type guy. You talked about the blocking and things like that, but man, as a pass catcher, I'm still confused with how he gets open so much. With how he moves, but he's been tremendous. And I definitely would assume that right now he's most people's tight end one.
He has that Jason Witten, he's not running fast, but he's always open type of vibe, right?
Right, but I think Witten ran kind of fast coming out of Tennessee, didn't he?
No, he did. He just didn't look like he was running fast, though. He looked like he was slow, but he just got separation.
Well, old Jason Witten, that's kind of what it looks like. And old Jason Witten for the Cowboys was good, right? He'd run the spots, turn around, shield guys away from the ball, catch the ball. He'd do some of those things. So it kind of looks a little bit like old Witten, who was still good. Old Witten was still good.
I mean, I don't even think it's a question that Michael Mayer is the number one tight end. There's no one close to him. You got Sam Laporta from Iowa, who's really good. I don't know how fast he's going to run. Kid by the name of Tucker Kraft from South Dakota State, who's an outstanding tight end. You can watch him as South Dakota State goes through the division, the FCS playoffs. He's my number one rated FCS prospect. But as good as these guys are, they just don't measure up to Meyer.
And you mentioned Isaiah Foskey before. Croc, your thoughts?
Oh, yeah. I mean, he's a guy that likes to stand up over the outside, rush from there. You see the body, you see the build, you see the athleticism, all that jumps off. You see the pursuit on the play. I talked about him chasing down Addison from behind and forcing that ball out of there. A lot of good things that I think people are going to really like. I can't wait to dive more into this film, but I did like what I saw from the game against USC, which was tough because you got a quarterback that's running around, scrambling. He's not just standing in the pocket, playing with timing and rhythm. He's not playing how you would expect him to play. That's pretty difficult on a defensive lineman that's trying to just get to the quarterback.
My number 2 rated Notre Dame prospect after Michael Mayer. I mean, a guy who's very athletic, as Croc said, comes out of a 3-point stance, stands over tackle, covers a lot of area on the field. much more than a guy that just pins his ears back and rushes up the field. He does a lot of things very well on the football field. I have him as a early second round pick. If he enters the draft, could he go first round? I think possibly with good workouts.
All right, we're going to get to a little review of the defensive rookies in the NFL from the 2022 class. But just a general statement for you guys, and I know, Tony, you're probably more the historian on this sort of stuff. You've been doing this for so long. I feel like as we've gone along this season, some of the guys that we thought were surefire top picks maybe haven't done as much as we would have liked. Overall, just the quality of this class, especially near the top in the first round, how would you say at this point of year it compares to kind of what we've seen in years past?
Well, I mean, I think it's difficult. And I think it's difficult because, in years past, rookies would sit for half a year, would sit for a year. I mean, we're with the New York Giants. I mean, Bill Parcells literally used to redshirt his rookies each year for the most part. So I think it's difficult. And I think these guys come in with, just crazy expectations. And remember, players at the top of the draft were basically offensive linemen, cornerbacks, even defensive linemen, where their errors oftentimes are very glaring and will basically gloss over some of the good things that they've done. I don't think it's been exceptionally great, but, it's not like 2013 where it looked like it was going to be a disaster from the onset. So I've seen some good things. I've seen some promise. That there have been some, you look at the Ohio State receivers doing very well in the NFL. Overall, sometimes you just got to give it time and wait and see how these guys do.
How about the upcoming 2023 class, guys? Your opinion on that as an overall class heading in at this point of year? Is it just too early in the process to really have a good feel for how strong this overall upcoming class is going to be in 2023? Croc, your thoughts?
I think a lot of people were waiting on this quarterback class saying this was the good one. And then some guys fell off, right? Like Will Levis hasn't played to the level that a lot of people thought he would. You have seen some guys starting to get a little bit better as the year goes on. DTR over at UCLA. You got Spencer Rattler. He's finishing this season strong. DJ Uiagalelei, that has not been good at all down the stretch here, which I thought middle of the year he started getting a little bit better. I thought he was hitting his groove, finding his mojo, and then all that did was lead to him eventually getting benched and looking not very good against South Carolina, a team that they probably should have beat by 2 scores. So everyone said that this was the quarterback class, and I think they're going to do the same thing next year when you have Caleb Williams coming out, when you have Drake May, the kid out of UNC, coming out. A lot of people are going to like him and maybe pencil him in as the number 1 quarterback out of that class. So I think you could see a little bit of that.
And I think that's wrong, because what happens is it happens. Everybody looks at the quarterback class to determine the strength of a draft.
The strength of it, yeah.
You got 22 positions on the field plus special teams, and it's wrong. I think if we go back, it'd be interesting, because I think a year ago when we were talking about this time, I think I probably had only 14 or 15 guys with sure first round grades on my board. I'm looking at my board right now. Right now, I've got 14 guys with surefire first round grades. That will change. And what I mean is, obviously, you're going to have 32 first rounders, but only how many of them right now deserve first round grades? I've got 14. That will obviously change as we go through the process, because guys will fall off. A lot of guys will move up. Workouts, Senior Bowl practices, Shrine Bowl practices, which mean a lot. I compare it pretty much to last year's draft in the sense that you got a lot of good defensive players at the top. You got Will Anderson of Alabama, Brian Brise of Clemson, Miles Murphy of Clemson, who I like, Jalen Carter of Georgia. A couple of receivers at the top with Jalen Hyatt. So I think it's very comparable to last year's draft. And like last year's draft, I think we're not going to see as many quarterbacks go in the first round as people had predicted literally up until the week before the 2022 draft.
All right, guys, if you like the show, go download the Giants TV app. You can find it for free on Amazon TV, Roku, wherever you stream your TV shows. It's free. Make sure you check it out. You also get game highlights, on-demand, direct video, everything you want. Again, check it out on any of those free services or, again, on the Giants mobile app. All right, guys, let's take a brief look. We did offense last week. Let's look at the defensive class here coming out in 2022, the rookie class in the NFL right now. And I think, Croc, we got to start with Sauce Gardner. I mean, this guy's playing like a seasoned pro. If he gives up a catch, people are showing it on YouTube like it's a big deal. This guy's a rookie. And guys just aren't, it's almost to the point where teams aren't throwing at him now. He's playing so well. I mean, we all thought he was one of the best players coming out last year. I thought it was crazy. Houston ended up picking Stingley over him, right? If I remember correctly, which I thought was crazy at the time they did. But Sauce Gardner has had a hell of a first year in the NFL.
Yeah, he's been pretty good and exceeding a lot of expectations. I mean, he came in with kind of that swagger and people were like, okay, yeah, this is CB1. You saw what he did at college, but you could say, well, maybe is it the level of competition that he consistently played against that made it to where he didn't give up a touchdown throughout his entire college career and all those things. But it has translated to the NFL. And you're right. Anytime you give up one catch, everybody wants to show that, right? Because, maybe it was a big play or he was in the area. But overall, he's been playing extremely well with a lot of confidence, as has some other cornerbacks from this class as well. I think Stingley is the one that's kind of having a little bit slower start. Tariq Woolen, he's one of the top guys in interceptions in the NFL. He was a 5th-round pick out of UTSA, and he was a guy that I thought, and a lot of other people were like, man, the guy has to hone in on playing the cornerback position. He's this longer, lean guy, but he's the most amazing athlete in this class. And you've seen him be able to put some of that on display. But, still, I'd say overall, at least from the cornerback standpoint, I think they've done a really good job hitting the ground running.
Yeah, Tony, if there was ever a spotlight on a player for this is why you scout traits and you don't scout performance, that's Tariq Woolen. You watched him at a low level of college football last year. It looked like he had any idea what he was doing. I knew he was a converted wide receiver. He couldn't play the ball. He's committing defensive pass interference penalties against guys that are nowhere near his athletic caliber. He goes to Seattle. He gets coached up. He learns how to play the position. Phenomenal rookie year for him.
And that's the key. He went to Seattle, and there are franchises that just know how to develop certain positions. Yeah. You think quarterback, you think Andy Reid, you think Shanahan, you think Seattle Seahawks, you think defensive backs. They just have a knack for taking those big athletic guys and getting them to play incredibly well at the cornerback position. So I think it was the perfect fit between franchise and player. I don't know that Tariq Woolen is going to be doing as well as he does on any other franchise. I think it was just a perfect match. Getting back to Ahmad Gardner, and I'm going to call him Ahmad Gardner because that's the name his mom gave him. Last week when we talked about the offensive players, I said the Jets hit a home run with Breece Hall. I said they hit a grand slam with Garrett Wilson. And Ahmad Gardner, they basically got the pitcher that is capable of pitching a perfect game every time he steps on the mound. I mean, the guy has been that brilliant. Had some struggles last week against Chicago, which was a rarity. But the fact is this with Ahmad Gardner. He was a better cornerback in 2021 than he was in 2020. And he's a much better cornerback in 2022 than he was in 2021. I was at the Jet game in the rain on Sunday, and they honored Darrelle Revis in the Ring of Honor. And I got to tell you, I've watched a lot of Jets football. Ahmad Gardner right now is playing better than Darrelle Revis did at equal points in their career in their rookie season. That is how outstanding Ahmad Gardner has been in 2022 for the New York Jets.
I saw someone say that if Antonio Cromartie and Darrelle Revis had a baby together, it would be Sauce Gardner. So,
yeah, you get the long, lanky arms, right? Yeah, nice.
Hey, it's 2022. It could happen, right?
Let's take the defensive backfield. Kyle Hamilton. I think the Ravens have done a good job of working him in slowly. He's only played in certain situations for him. I think, Tony, you've been proven correct in some of your criticisms or scouting opinions from last year. I think criticism is a little bit strong. I think we've seen him in space against smaller receivers in the slot has not gone so well for him. But I think when they put him in other positions where he's more suited to play, I think he's done a pretty nice job.
I mean, he's a strong safety type. That's what he is. And teams don't, that's a position that's kind of doesn't have much of a priority anymore because you need that third safety or that second safety to play over the slot receiver. I'm just wondering how long before they put 10, 15 pounds on him and use him an outside linebacker, because I think that's going to be his ultimate position.
And that's what you've been saying all along. So anyone that's listening or watching this show right now, That is not a new take from Tony. He's been saying all along, he might be more suited to play that outside linebacker or something like that. And look, 49ers have someone who has similar abilities, I guess you could say, and especially as a prospect coming out of college, BYU, Fred Warner. Fred Warner was not a Mike linebacker at BYU. He played kind of that star overhang position. And the 49ers saw him and said, you know what? 6'3", 6'4", 235 pounds. Let's put you at Mike. And he's done a terrific job at that, using that athleticism out in space, firing in on run plays. And yeah, I agree. I think if you add a good 15 pounds to Hamilton, he could do. Now, again, you have to be a different type of person to play linebacker and bang heads all day, especially at the level that Fred Warner does. But just talking about ability, I think Kyle Hamilton has some of that.
You mentioned Mike linebackers. Well, let's get to Devin Lloyd. And I'll raise my hand on this one and say, my bad, because I watched him a bunch last year. I thought he was a good player. I just couldn't get on board with like the top 10, top 15 hype. But that guy has proven to be a really instinctual player this year. Good against the run. He's made plays in the passing game, which is where I kind of thought his strength lied, but he's been physical in the run game too. And I think the Jaguars have to be very happy. Frankly, I think he's been a better player this year than Trayvon Walker has been early in the year, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, you got to go back and watch the 2020 film on Devin Lloyd, because he was absolutely. I mean, he was an explosive playmaker. He wasn't bad last year at Utah. He
wasn't bad. No.
He just did not improve on the outstanding 2020 film. You know, I said all along, I love the pick. I was kind of surprised that Jacksonville, with their second first-round pick, and even throughout the draft, didn't go more offense to help the quarterback, Trevor Lawrence. But yeah, I mean, Lloyd has given me everything I expected, because he was more athletic than his 40 time, and people were disappointed when he ran a 4.69. Like a 4.69 is a slow time, or whatever it was, a high 4.6s. But he plays fast. He's smart, and again, he always showed himself to be a 3-down linebacker at Utah, which is why I always stamped him, right in the middle of my top prospects, as far as my top 32 prospects. So I'm glad to see it's worked out for him.
And then they drafted Chad Muma, the Crocs guy, in I think the second or third round. Third round, yeah. And he's been playing for them too. All right, let's get to the pass rushers here. The three big guys, Hutchinson, Walker, and Thibodeau. And guys, to be honest with you, I think we nailed all three of these guys, to be honest with you. Hutchinson's been a really good football player. I don't think he's a guy that's going to win with speed, but he has flash and inside move. He hustles for a lot of his sacks. He just keeps going, keeps fighting. He's made a couple great plays in the pass game, dropping into coverage, showing off that natural athleticism that he has. Kayvon Thibodeau, I thought that the best game of his career this past week against Dallas. He took it to Tyler Smith a little bit. He's been better against the run than he has been against the pass. He's been relying a little bit too much on that kind of outside speed rush, and he hasn't gotten around the edge as much as he would like. I like to see a little bit more variety there. And then I think we nailed Trayvon Walker too, right? Athlete, good football player, good against the run, but I'm not going to say non-existent, but we've seen the lack of a refined pass rush game from him, and that's shown up in his lack of pass rush production.
Yeah, I mean, my issue with Walker is the fact that I think he's best with his hand in the ground as a consistent 4-3 defensive end. That's not how Jacksonville uses him. Jacksonville they took Josh Allen, they made him stand up over tackle in their 3-4. They took the kid from LSU a couple of years ago who never panned out. It was the same.
Chase on, right?
Never panned out. Same sort of. Yeah, Trayvon Walker, doesn't have great sack numbers, but I think he's better off. I've always said I think he's better off in a 4-man front with his hand in the ground, coming out of a 3-point stance. You want to stand them up on occasion, fine. That, in my opinion, is part of the problem. Is just the misuse of him.
Croc, your thought on that? Those array of guys there.
Yeah, I think, like you said, kind of spot on. And that's how people identify them. Maybe it just might take a little bit longer for Walker. You see him come out, especially early in the preseason, goes out, gets a sack. You see some production there, right? Well, it's just preseason. Let's see him in the NFL. NFL gets a sack, an amazing interception off of Carson Wentz, where kind of peeled back and he really flashed that athleticism. But since then, it has been a little bit more hit and miss than they probably would like. But he's somebody that I think they have to bring along slowly. And Trent Baalke, he's been the general manager there. He drafted him. He was a guy who was the GM for the 49ers. He likes those long arm, lanky guys that have a lot of athleticism. Had a guy by the name of Alden Smith who really hit the ground running, but a lot of people forget this. Alden Smith, as a rookie, he was just a situational pass rusher. He just ended up having a bunch of sacks, right, on that defense that he was playing with, being able to rush off the edge. But there was still a lot that he had to learn. He was just more freakish. And I think Walker, he has that freakish ability as well. They're just waiting for it to be a little bit more consistent.
No question about it. Any other rookies on defense that you guys want to kind of point out and highlight here that we haven't touched on? Good.
I can't say I do.
I agree.
Yeah.
I'm with you. All right, guys, good stuff. We'll be back in a few weeks after we get through all the conference championships and everything. We'll start highlighting some of the accepted invitations to both the Shrine Bowl and the Senior Bowl as we get closer here, as we continue throughout the end of the college football season. Gentlemen, always fun. We'll talk to you in a couple weeks.
Look forward to it.
Right.
For Tony Poley and Eric Crocker, I'm John Schmuck. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Draft Season. Once again, it's brought to you by Tommy Hilfiger, a PVH brand and an official partner of the New York Football Giants. For Tony and Eric, I'm John Schmuck. We'll see you next time. This is Draft Season.